I finally got my hands on it, what some are calling the smartphone camera killer. I couldn't resist the temptation, I had to get it myself. This is the camera that is the smartphone camera killer. The camera that's going to stop smartphone photographers everywhere from taking photos on their smartphones and use this device. You know that I'm Mr. Smartphone Photographer. I do all my photos on my smartphone and most of my video on smartphone. So right off the bat, what kind of a camera is it going to take? First of all, it's got to be extremely portable. That's the reason most of us use our smartphones. Secondly, it's got to take really awesome photos. I'm pretty happy with what my smartphone can do where it comes to photography, so I'm not sweating that. Of course, we can get higher resolution. You can always do that. But let's face it, most of us who take photos on our smartphones are not really dying to make these humongous prints. I mean, we're probably going to do an 8x10, we'll do a 6x4 if we are going to print at all. Most of our photography lives online. Thirdly, this camera's got to be very easy to use. It's got to be so user-friendly because when I have my smartphone, I just whip it up, I just click. It's very, very simple. It's got to be able to compete with that. So, here's the big reveal. The Canon EOS M100. Size comparison. Not bad. Flip screen. Good for selfies. Now, obviously, all this is not going to fit in my pocket. However, interchangeable lenses, that's not bad. Pretty tempting. This is the entire size of my smartphone camera. This sports an APS-C sensor, 24.2 megapixels. But let's be real, the average smartphone user isn't concerned with spec wars and pixel peeping. We just want great photos with minimal fuss and faff. So pretty much what I'm gonna do is film on this camera that's supposed to be a smartphone killer. We're gonna see how it performs in low light. We're gonna see how it performs in windy conditions. We're gonna see how stealthy I can be with this. We're gonna see if the ease of use is all that it's cracked up to be. I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm just gonna do it and let you be the judge of these results. What's up everybody and welcome to Leo Does Street. This is the show where I learn all about street photography by actually doing it. Let's get it. So I do have to admit, this is a stealth machine. It's so small, It's so good for street photography. I've never been more hidden, and those of you that know me know that this has been an ongoing problem for me, is how to be invisible. This camera is amazing at that. So one thing I found with this camera is even in the slightest breezes, it's extremely difficult to hear the audio. And I know that it's stabilized, but there is a bit of a jiggediness to it, something that my smartphone cancels out almost entirely. So I don't know. How are you finding it? We're in a shaded area now. I don't know how it's rendering the colors in the dynamic range. One thing I do have to say is that this camera is great for just pointing and shooting. If you're interested in doing anything deeper than that, it's just better to have a regular DSLR in my opinion. Hello. Can you hear me, or is the wind really, really bad? This is right up to my face. It's not far at all. You should be able to make out what I'm saying. The breeze is not that strong. Okay, I'm gonna run a bit of a simultaneous test at this moment. I wanna know which footage is more stable, which sound is better, and low light performance. Right, so I've got two gizmos. I've got the M100 plus my iPhone 6s Plus. What audio is better? What stability is better? And what low light performance is better? I'm running them at the same time. They're touching, so it's the same level of shake, if you will. So here are my thoughts having used this camera for about a week or so. I loved when I took it to do my street photography. Its footprint is so tiny, I did not draw any attention to myself at all. In fact, because of the flip screen that you use, if I was taking photos of people on the streets, a lot of the time they just thought I was looking at my camera adjusting settings. I loved that with this camera you could zoom out and in, but you can do that with the latest smartphones, so that's not much of a win. I was saddened that I couldn't get lovely depth of field and bokeh. I really hoped that as I zoomed further out, I could really force the issue as regards that, but I couldn't. And you can get extra lenses for these, but there's not very many, and the ones that you can get are not great for excellent bokeh and depth of field, you know, the blurry background. So if I wanted to do that, I would have to get an adapter and add one of my other lenses from my larger Canon cameras to get some lovely depth of field, but then the camera gets bigger because those lenses are bigger anyway, and the adapter is pretty big anyway, so that kind of defeats the small footprint side of things. I was disappointed by the audio. Anytime a breeze blew, even if it was really soft, it just destroyed the audio. And of course, this camera doesn't give you anywhere to connect an external mic, which you probably wouldn't want to do anyway, because that would just make it more clunky. So yeah, the audio was such a big letdown. That wasn't cool. It seems to me that this camera is great for just pointing and shooting, but when you have a camera of this size, you really want to tinker about with it. And if you're going to tinker about with the camera to get really cool settings, you might as well just go the whole way and get yourself a proper DSLR. I found that the menus were not as intuitive as they could have been for someone coming from a smartphone. The resolution of the phone is pretty great. You get 24 megapixels, but when I looked at the photos and compared them to my smartphone photos, on the kind of things that I use these photos for, things like Instagram, social media, yeah, it wasn't a big enough difference for me to feel like I needed this camera. So all in all, it's a decent little camera, but I'm not sure that this is going to sway smartphone users away from using their smartphones. It just isn't as easy to use as your smartphone is. The pictures are not that much better than what your smartphone can do. I actually found that my smartphone, in my opinion, had better stabilization. This little camera doesn't even have 4K. Your smartphone has 4K. So who is this camera for? I don't know. They say it's for beginners. I don't even think it's for people who are wanting to grow into a bigger camera, because when you grow into that kind of world, you want to be able to tweak settings. And with this camera, like I said, it's not that intuitive. and because it doesn't have a viewfinder and all the typical things you'd find on a bigger camera, you'd be doing yourself a disservice using this to graduate to a bigger camera. The thing that's going for this camera is that it's such a low price point, because when you're buying a smartphone, a really good one nowadays, you're probably paying about 800 plus, 600 plus, something like that. And this comes in the UK at least, at about £400. Very cheap, but then you can't edit your photos in camera, and you can't make calls with this, and you can't do anything else but take photos with this camera. And like I said, the lenses are not exceptional. So no. I do have to say it shone so much when I was trying to be inconspicuous and taking photos of people. That to me was the best part of it. And I do think it has an edge in terms of the video quality that it was taking. The way it renders, the dynamic range seemed better to me than my smartphone. But I just don't know that that's enough for a smartphone photographer, or videographer for that matter, to think, yeah, I'm gonna ditch everything for this one thing. If you had to pick one, I definitely think you'd be holding on to your smartphone. So this is the audio coming straight out of the Canon EOS M100 in a lovely wind-free environment. Do you like what you hear? Let me know. One of the things I forgot to say earlier is that when it comes to autofocus, if you're doing video, the focus is pretty sweet. It really does know how to track your face. So that's a great thing. Would you buy this camera over a smartphone? Let me know down in the comments. I hope you found some of that useful. If you did, please subscribe. That would be so useful. Until next time, I am Leo, the visual magpie. Salute!